Well, folks, I am just back from Africa safaris. Whoo, boy, jet lag city. But I'll tell you what, that 16-hour flight back is worth it because what an adventure Africa always is. But on this last safari, I learned some old lessons or relearned some old lessons that I think can help all of us in our hunting travels, whether you're going to Africa or Argentina or Australia or Iowa or Alabama, wherever you hunt. It's important to remember some important lessons that I forgot. I'll explain it all on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Well, during this recent African safari, I went to 2 countries. I hunted in Namibia with Immenhof Safaris, with whom I've been several times before. Always a great trip. Great folks there. But then I went down to check out a new area in South Africa with Crusader Safaris. I've hunted with them 2 or 3 times before as well, but they've got a new area. That sounded pretty exciting, called the Kei River. The Kai River. That's how they pronounce it. Looks like Kei, sounds like Kai. But that's where I had my problems, guys. And part of the problem has to do with my new rifle. If you have been watching some of my recent videos, I got this gorgeous new Park West Arms rifle, a single shot falling black, a real classic rifle for African hunting, if you like single shots. And I think most of us reach a certain stage in our hunting careers where this idea of a single shot making us hunt much more carefully and going for that one perfect shot really appeals to us. But that's where I got in trouble. So let's just go over all of this stuff and how it all worked. First of all, good times with some new friends, some old friends, and just some great safari. It is always fun to take folks along who really appreciate what a safari offers. The whole experience of being in a new country with wonderful new wildlife and its abundance and good folks to help you, guide you, feed you, take care of you. It's just a real vacation. But oh my gosh, are there some fun opportunities over there and great hunting opportunities at good prices. As Rod said, Rod was from the Wichita area, just a great guy, and he had the most success of any of us. This guy was shooting like a house afire. He took his time, he made his shots count, and I think he got 1-shot kills on all of his game, except for a couple of times he gave him a finisher. But man, did he get some beautiful trophies. And he said that this whole experience was something obviously he didn't want to miss, and yet he had waited so long to do it. He had gotten past the middle age, shall we say. I don't know exactly what his age was, but he is younger than I am, but still he thought, man, what a wonderful trip. And his wife helped him with this by urging him to go. She was over in Africa with a study group of some kind, leading some kids over there, and she enjoyed a little photographic safari. So when he proposed going on a hunt with me, she was all for it. And I can tell you, based on what I go through here with my wife, Betsy, supporting me, it is really wonderful when your spouse supports you on things like this. I have friends who just can't go because their wife won't let them or their husband won't let them. And I actually know women who go to Africa on their own because their husband is not interested in it. I can't believe it. Stuff happens. At any rate, Rod, gosh, he got a 44-inch bull sable. That is a huge sable. And then he tops it off with a 42-inch bull oryx. Almost unheard of. Biggest one I ever got was maybe 40 inches. So he was just having a great time and really appreciating the whole experience. Now, Robert was along. He was an older gentleman, had never gone to Africa either. And he wasn't nearly as gung-ho as the younger guys, but he fully enjoyed the experience. Did a little bit more, shall we say, road hunting, in which they would drive the trails and look for something and then make short stalks. We were walking an average of 6 miles a day, and he did not want to put that kind of mileage on his old legs, I think. But he still had a wonderful time and really enjoyed seeing all the different wildlife. And then when he was a little bit tired, he could hop into a blind at a water hole and watch everything come in and just have a wonderful time. And he got his game and was perfectly happy with it. So we all just really had a great time. Now, Eric was a new friend from Sweden, and he's actually one of the owners of North Fork Bullets. And he came along so that I could test his bullets along with him. And he and I filmed one another, and he was shooting a 300 Weatherby Magnum. I was shooting the 757 single shot, which got me into some trouble. We're getting into that here pretty soon. But he was also getting into trouble with his 300 Weatherby Magnum. Now, how could that be possible? Well, as he said about halfway through the hunt, I think it's maybe a little more gun than I need. So this is going counter to the old use enough gun that you are often advised to do in Africa. Don't take too small of a rifle. Well, he found out that maybe the 300 Weatherby Magnum was bigger than needed. And he based that both on the performance of it on game as compared to my 757. He just really seemed to like the whole idea of this light, trim little rifle that I was packing around compared to the bigger, heavier Magnum he was carrying that he really didn't need, because almost all of our shots came at about 250 yards or less. I don't think any of us took a shot beyond that. There might have been a 300 in there by somebody. At any rate, I just bring that up, and then I'm going to tie in Rod's rifle here to make this point. Rod was shooting a 270 Winchester, just a common Ruger and 270 Winchester. And that's how he got all his game with 150 grain bullets. I was using the old 757 Mauser. A lot of people think that's maybe not even big enough for deer. And yet I was taking eland with it, and zebra and giraffe, big animals. The right bullet will do the job for you guys with your deer rifle. So deer, elk, your common 270s, 30-06s, any of that stuff is going to work over there. In fact, a lot of the Africans we hunted with will use a 6.5, don't tell anybody, Creedmoor. They actually use that over there, and quite successfully. Now, here comes Cubby for a visit. Dependable. Every time I try one of these, start up one of these podcasts, here comes Cubby. Don't trip on all the wires here, Cubby. You better go downstairs and wait. Do you want to come up here and say hi to everybody? Come on up then. Okay. Come on. That's it. Step over that cord right up here now. Come on, girl. Get that head up there. Come on up. Say hi to everybody. Yeah. There you go. Get your feet up there. Get your feet up there. Oh, there she is. Oh, Cubby. You are such a ham. You just always want to be in the limelight, don't you? Yeah, I do. Besides, you need to feed me. I'm getting hungry. You want to walk, a run, and some food, don't you? Yeah, good girl. You didn't get to go hunting in Africa, did you? Too bad. There were some birds over there. You would have liked it. All right, you go downstairs and wait by the door. We'll be going here pretty quick. Now, where was I? Oh, Rod and his 270. So the 757, the 270 did just fine, guys. Don't hesitate to go over there with your deer rifle, whatever works for you, and something that you're familiar with. And this brings up one of my problems. The problem was I had this beautiful new single shot rifle, and I was spending too much time thinking about the rifle instead of the shot. That was my biggest mistake. But there were other ones, and it has to do with the ammunition that I made and didn't take enough of. Oh, man, this is going to make me sound like a real rube here. Here's how it came down, guys. I had to make some loads for this new rifle in a hurry, and I didn't have a lot of bullets to work with. I had one box of 50 160 grain North Fork semi-Spitzers, and then I also had a box of 50 131 grain Hammer Hunters. I wanted to try both of them. But I didn't have enough bullets and time to really work up some loads. So it took me about 3 different recipes to come up with the load that I chose for the 160. 3 shots were grouping at about a minute of angle. Plenty good enough for what we were going to be shooting over in Africa. So I thought, great, I'm driving at 2,700 feet per second. That's going to work. Then I worked up the load with the 131 grain Hammer Hunters, and I got that thing going to 3,200 feet per second. Whew, it was smoking. So I backed it off to 3,100, thinking I was maybe overdoing it, although I didn't see pressure signs. And that was grouping 3/4 of an inch at 100 yards. I am set. So I'm going to use one for my Namibia hunt, and then the second one is going to be for the Crusader hunt at the Kai River. And that's where I got into trouble. So I start off with the 160s, and I'm thinking about the rifle too much. And instead of just going, there's my shot, bang, I go, there's my shot. Wait a minute. I'm shooting a single shot. I better take extra care and make sure it's perfect. And by doing that, I sort of talked myself out of it. It was the weirdest feeling, but I could feel, and I think I knew what I was doing subconsciously, but it just messed me up. And then again, I was also thinking about not damaging this new rifle because it's so pretty. And I've told everybody, I don't care if it's pretty. I'm going to hunt with it anyway. No safe queens in my arsenal. And yet I was sort of treating it like a safe queen. So I was thinking, man, if I put it on these shooting sticks, am I going to scratch it when it goes off and all that kind of silly stuff? So the upshot is I did make a perfect shot on my first animal, an eland. We had to finish it off, track it for a while, and then finish it off. Okay. But then on another incident, I started thinking about my shots and I hesitated. And then I took a running shot and hesitated again. And it was almost a debacle. Worst shooting I've ever done in Africa. And it was kind of sad because this was my pet rifle I was so proud of. And I loved carrying it and it shoots great, but I was messing up. Now I got all the animals that I tried to get, that I shot at, but a couple of them required 2 shots. And that one that I missed a couple of times was really sick. But my point is, know your rifle before you go. And this goes back to Rod and his old 270. He knew that rifle like the back of his hand. He's been shooting it forever, so there was nothing surprising him. And he wasn't worried about scratching anything. He just went hunting, concentrated on his shots. I watched him shoot an impala. He made a perfect shot on it. I can't remember if I watched him shoot the oryx. No, I did not get to see that. But it was pretty obvious that the man was really dialed in, both with his brain as well as his rifle and scope and ammunition. He had prepared properly. That's the way to do it, not the way I did it. So what was the next mistake I made? Not taking enough ammunition. I took 20 rounds of each of these, figuring that would be more than enough because in all my former trips over there, I've come back with a lot of ammunition. I usually shoot carefully, pick my shots, and get my animal with 1 or 2. Well, you get 5, 6, or 7 animals, you don't need a lot of ammunition. Plus, I had to take some ammo and a rifle over there in 458 lot for some other testing, and that weighs a lot, and you're only allowed so much weight on these trips over there, especially on your ammunition. And I just didn't think I had a lot of extra room to spare to bring more. So why bring more? Well, I'm about to tell you why you should bring more. After the good luck that I had taking the animals with this 160, I wanted to, of course, try the 131. And that's what I used hunting on the Kai River with Crusader safaris. I was going to target a kudu. That's really all I wanted, was a big kudu. But we will, of course, see what else pops up. That's the sweet thing about hunting in Africa. Generally, you can sort of take whatever shows up. If you see a good warthog, take a warthog. Then you buy your license. It's not really a license. You just pay for the animal when you get it, because on private ground, the animals are owned by the landowner. So I figured, well, I might shoot a warthog or an impala or something, but really wanted to focus on this kudu. So I get to camp, and of course, you're going to zero your rifle so that the guide knows you're shooting in the right place as well as you. I do that, and my golly, the thing is shooting like 2 inches low. Well, I've just gone from 160 grain to 131, so I expected that. I dial it up and get it about 2.5 inches high, and I figure I'm good to go out to 300 with a dead-on hold easily. We go hunting. I get a 250-yard shot at an impala, sitting down, not the impala, me, sitting down in a tripod, nice and steady, felt like a perfect shot. The animal starts to go down, recovers, streaks off. I figure we'll find him dead. We barely found a track or a speck of blood. I think we found maybe 3 tiny little specks of blood. What is going on? Went back and looked at the video that Betsy had taken with the cell phone, And we could see that the bullet just grazed the top of the ham. So I'd shot way to the right and high. What is going on? I've got to re-zero this rifle again. Did something happen to the scope? Well, I shoot and this rifle is grouping goofy all over. I mean, we're talking 2.5 inch group. And I'm burning up my ammunition, starting to worry about that. So now, what am I going to do? Shoot more ammo to get this thing dialed in, waste it, and then not have any? So what I decided was based on what I know about copper bullets. Quite often with these, if you do not shoot that copper bullet over a clean barrel, if you shoot it over a barrel that's already been fouled with a different kind of bullet, they do not shoot accurately. Then I remembered when I was home working up my loads, after I got done developing the load with 160 grain North Fork, I cleaned the barrel before I started testing the 131 hammers. And then it shot beautifully. I thought maybe that's my problem. Typically, copper bullet shouldn't be an issue. It's when you use a gilding metal bullet and then follow it with copper that you have the problems. But maybe the alloys are significantly different between these two. I thought that was my best bet. I'd better waste 3 shots getting this thing dialed in. I did that after cleaning the barrel, very thoroughly cleaned that barrel, went down to the range, bingo, 3 shots under an inch. Set it up for 2 inches high, 2.5 inches high, went impala hunting and got one just like that. So the lesson that I learned or relearned, well, there were several of them. 1, I've already mentioned, take a rifle you're familiar with. 2, take ammunition that you know and can trust, not something you developed the day before you left. Welcome to my life. And then take enough ammunition. Now, I still ended up coming home with plenty of extra rounds, but mostly because I never had a chance to shoot a kudu. We just could not find this big bull we were looking for. And I've shot kudu before. It wasn't like I just needed to shoot a kudu. I was looking for Mr. Special, but no big deal. What we found on this Kai River that so intrigued us when we first heard about it was what we call Rewilding Africa. South Africa has a program in which the government cooperates with landowners to rewild their properties. So you've got a ranch that's been functioning as livestock ranch for the last, 200 years or more. And most of the wildlife was taken off. It was the same as our pioneers here in the States. You move into bison country, you want to raise cattle and corn and beans and something else. You don't want bison on your property. So we got rid of the bison. We got rid of a lot of wildlife because you cannot survive as a pioneer with all this game eating your crops. Same thing happened in Africa. They pushed out the buffalo, they pushed out the wildebeest and all of these animals that were taking away from their livings, essentially. Well, these days, with hunter demand for a limited resource, native wildlife in Africa, you can make more money with native wildlife than livestock. And the government understands and appreciates this because when hunters come over to Africa to hunt, they're not just taking game, they're providing job opportunities for all kinds of folks in rural areas where there's really not that many job opportunities. So you have cooks and camp managers and trackers and skinners and butchers and all kinds of folks getting employment. The rancher is producing more protein, more meat off of the native wildlife than he does off of cattle because they're more efficient and more diverse. And he's able to sell that and make his living. And then the government is getting money from fees for bringing your rifle in, and you're staying in hotels and you're eating in restaurants, and it just drives the economy. So since they started this program several decades back, roughly after the apartheid went away, they got rid of apartheid and started this system. Some 500 cattle farms have been converted into wildlife and hunting farms, covering something like, I think he told me 50 million acres of ground. And that is more than the size, I think, of their national parks. And I think he said he had something like 5 times more native wildlife living on these private farms than they did in their national parks. Then this Kai River farm that Crusader Safaris had picked up was one of these rewilding opportunities. So they are in the process of rehabilitating the overgrazed landscape that has grown up in a lot of weeds, especially white thorn brush that you can barely get through. And they're reintroducing the native wildlife. So it was a great program to understand and tour that area and see how these improvements are working. And just off of this area is a kind of a village township native reserve area on which they have a lot of cattle and goats and no wildlife. I mean, we are seeing giraffe and impala and wildebeest and even Cape buffalo already on this new rewilding area on the Kai. But across the river on the native grounds, there are none. You don't see any giraffe. You don't see really anything but goats and cattle. People have to make a living somehow, and it's a lot easier to find a goat to milk than an impala. So that's how the system works, and we are so impressed with that we want to go back because it's a gorgeous, big, rolling, hilly area, and it was really fun to hunt and stalk. And Betsy was able to borrow a rifle while we were there. She can't quite handle my 757 because of the length of pull, but they had something called a Q Fix rifle, one of these all new chassis rifles, modern looking, with not only an adjustable comb and an adjustable length of pull, but a folding butt stock so it gets more compact. It had a really short barrel with a suppressor on it, and it was the kind of rifle I'm all not that fond of, but Betsy shot it very well. And she said when she was hunting and shooting her impala that it was the steadiest rifle she'd ever shot. I don't know exactly what was going on there, but it worked for her. And she and our wonderful PH Dave did a long stalk on some impala, very carefully stalked this herd, and they got within about 100 yards of it without it knowing. I could see at least a dozen females and the little fawns feeding. And Betsy and Dave were set up. Betsy was on the sticks with a gun in the yoke for, at least 3 minutes, waiting for the ram to show up. And it finally did. And when it did, she moved just a little bit to get on it, and it saw that, turned and looked right at her. And she made a perfect shot on the neck, dropped it right there, about a 70-yard shot. And she was just crazy about that little rifle because it fit so well. So we had a great time over there, and I learned my lessons. Now, the final thing I want to talk about over there is high fences. And this plays into this Kai River rewilding program. Rewilding only works when you've got fences, unless it's a vast, huge area. But know this, even Kruger National Park, the biggest one in South Africa, is fenced. You have to fence it to both keep the game from leaving and the poachers from coming. The poachers love to get in there and take that free meat. I mean, it's a big problem in Africa because they don't have game wardens. They don't have a system like ours in which hunters pay the government license fees and they are taxed on their guns and ammo purchases the way we are. All that money goes to wildlife restoration and protection over here, not over there. So it's up to the individual landowner to police his areas or the national parks. But the national parks aren't going to be working this 50 million acres of ranch ground to keep the poachers out. They need fences too. So the point is, so many of us say, I'm never hunting behind a fence. It's artificial. The game can't escape. It's like you might as well shoot fish in a barrel. But it really doesn't work that way. And I think we need to start thinking about why this needs to be reconsidered. Some of these areas are 10 miles by 10 miles with a fence around it to keep the poachers out and the game in. And as I said, it's essential. I've been on plenty of places over there that didn't have the high fences. They just didn't have the wildlife. A few small antelope here and there, but you just don't get the numbers that you do when you've got a fenced area. So I just suggest that you don't automatically reject a high fence place in Africa, because by doing so, you're not helping them with this rewilding program. Maybe someday enough ranches in proximity to one another can get rid of a lot of their fences, But until that happens, if you've got a 30,000 acre ranch and you put a big fence around it to keep the game in and you reintroduce species, that is much preferable to then letting things run out and get poached, and you can't maintain that situation, that operation. So it's a little yin and yang on this one, but do think hard about it. I can say this. Many of these high fence places that I've hunted in Africa, I found game to be much harder to get than pure wild areas that I've hunted in Mozambique. I was twice now on an area in Mozambique with wonderful wildlife populations, but it is so gently hunted, so calmly hunted by these intelligent PHs. They don't run willy-nilly and scare everything. They only take old animals and a very small percentage of the total population, and they just keep things calm, and you routinely find game within shooting range that's not spooky. Whereas on some of these hunting ranches where they're doing more hunting because they have to cull a certain number of them to keep them within carrying capacity, the game gets pretty darn spooky. They're seeing hunters a lot more often, and they're harder to get a decent shot at. So again, yin and yang. It's not necessarily cut and dried shooting fish in a barrel. So give them a chance. I mean, I am advocating hunting on these fenced places in Africa because it gives the locals incentive to bring back game and rewild their country. I think it's going to work in the long run. The local PHs said that the government is 100% behind it. They are not at all happy with these Westerners trying to force anti-hunting laws on them and stopping things like importation of trophies and such, because that whole hunting enterprise over there is what's sponsoring the rewilding of Africa. So that was my experience. As I said up front, I learned a lot. I made some mistakes, but I think that's just a part of doing what we do. We can't get complacent and think because we've been a hunter for X number of years, we pretty much know it all and we can just roll along. We still have to consider everything from the ammunition that we're bringing and the rifles that we're bringing and the contributions that we are making to conservation. So I urge everyone to give Africa a look. I know a lot of us over here think, well, we're Americans, we should go hunt moose and elk and deer. And besides, Africa's too expensive anyway. But my thinking is, this is planet Earth, and most of us living in the US of A have come from somewhere else originally anyway. And that includes Native Americans who migrated over from Asia long before the Europeans started to come in. And the same thing in Africa. The different peoples and different tribes moved in from other areas over the centuries. It's just the way the life on planet Earth has worked. So I think we have as much right to visit and hunt there as we do in the US of A and Canada and Alaska and Argentina and Australia and everyone else. It's our planet. We need to take care of it, and we can do that with sustainable hunting. So thanks for all of your contributions, everyone. Thanks for watching the show, and thanks to all of our patrons for supporting us. If you would like to join us on Patreon, just go to patreon.com, Ron Spomer Outdoors, and all the instructions are in there for joining us and helping out with these broadcasts. We really appreciate it. Oh, before I sign off, Betsy told me that I should tell you I love the rifle. And that's not just because she upgraded it to its beautiful condition. I actually did love this rifle. I knew I would. I liked carrying it sort of like a baby in my arm, not because I needed to baby it, but it just feels so comfortable right there. And it's a great way to protect your rifle and make sure the muzzle's pointing in a safe direction. So I carried it like that a lot. I carried it with a sling because, as I mentioned, we were averaging 6 miles a day. One day we did 10 miles. So you need to alternate your positions as you're carrying it. But boy, it sure helped that it's a lightweight rifle. I used a pretty good sized Swarovski scope on it. It was a 3 to 10 by 42. It looked a little bit oversized for it. And the weight of it is not that much. Swarovski scopes, the Z3s at least, are nicely light, but I can get a lighter one. They've got the 3 to 9 by 36. I think I'm going to put that one on for just a little more weight savings. But gosh, Swarovski quality optically is like, you can't beat it. And it worked just flawlessly for me over there. Everything worked flawlessly, really, except for me. And then that dirty barrel that I tried shooting these over. But the rifle itself, I can't complain, man. It can shoot very darn well. It just needs somebody to run it well. But I'm going to be doing a lot more hunting with this rifle. Don't worry, Betsy. I really appreciate it. I do love it. Absolutely. So Park West Arms SD10 falling block. You won't see many of them in the field, but if you'd like to have one, I'll bet you Park West would make one for you. I hope it's not as pretty as mine, though. I like to have the prettiest one. Until next time, hunt honest, hunt Africa if you can, and shoot straight.